Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda and this video is all going to be in the car. You might see dogs' heads pop up because it's just me and the dogs today in the car. It's pretty early in the morning. We are driving from our home in Alabama to my parents' house in Arkansas. It's going to be my first visit back since we dropped off our son for college, which hasn't even started yet, and since we got to Alabama. Anyway, I have all of the books that I read in July to talk about today. And you're going to say, you brought the books with you that you read? And the answer is yes, because there's not that many physical books. It's just this many. So yes, I brought them with me. So we're going to do this in sections, right? And the first section is, it doesn't really fit in a category. That's this section. So I read Kindred and the graphic novel of Kindred, and I actually made a video about the two of these, so I will link that somewhere above and you guys can hear my full thoughts about it. But my basic thoughts about it are, it is such an amazing thought experiment that I never even considered before, and I wonder how many people do think about it. And ultimately what it's about is a woman who is being pulled back in time to protect a boy, and she finds out that there are things that affect her life and her future based on what happens with this boy, and she might have to do things that she doesn't really want to do. There we go. That is that one. The other one, the only other physical one that I have from this category is Elantris. Let me put it on this side where I have all this room. It's a library copy, so it's very shiny. But it is the first Brandon Sanderson book. And I wasn't sure what to expect because I've already read like 10 or 11 of his books, and you kind of get a feel for his writing in those books. And it was really nice to go back to the beginning and see like where things started. I still like the way he does characters. I still like that he has that little bit of humor in there that I feel like he does a really good job of adding in, which in a lot of his books comes in with some like little sidekick or a little, I don't know, familiar, an animal familiar or something like that. But in this book, that was not there. But anyway, what this is Elantris is a place, and it had special people in it that had special abilities, and something happened and those people all died, and there's a disease that if the people outside of Elantris get this disease, they throw them into Elantris. So we start out with a prince who is about to get married to a princess from another country, and they've never met each other, but they've talked through their, anyway, little sci-fi things. They've been able to talk to each other. So they know each other, but the day she gets there to surprise him and say, hey, I came a little bit early before our wedding, he wakes up and he's got this disease, and so they throw him in Elantris. And so this is just about her finding out about Elantris and finding out that maybe things aren't exactly the way they seem from the outside, and then him on the inside kind of discovering that things are definitely not the way they seem and working through all of that from the inside. And so it's just, it was really good. I really liked it. And I feel like at its heart, it's just a love story, but he still does such a good job with all of his extra characters, like all of the side characters and the tertiary characters, not even the ones that have significant parts. You still know who they all are. They're very distinct. I really like the way that he does characters. So that's Elantris. That's the last physical one that I have. The other two that don't have a category, one of them is Project Hail Mary. I loved this book so much. It made me laugh, and I really liked it. Project Hail Mary was just so good. I feel like I've already talked about this. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. It's on my list, so I'm going to talk about it again. This was a birthday read from Fina at Fina Reads, and it was just so good. She talked about, she told me that this book would be good and I would like it, and this really introduced me to this whole sci-fi hard science. I did talk about it. I'm sorry. People are walking by because I'm at Sonic, by the way. I had to get me a tea for the drive, and Skeeter is not having people walking by. You're fine, Skeeter. It's fine. Okay, so let me do this. Project Hail Mary, a guy wakes up and he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know who he is. He deduces that he is clearly on a spaceship for some reason, and he doesn't know why. So I recently heard, what's her name? Kayla from Books and Lala saying that she liked books, space books that didn't really take place in space. And I thought, well, that's weird. But I think that might be what this is. This is a book that he's in space. He's in a spaceship, but it's not really in space. I don't know. I don't know what exactly she was talking about with that, but this was so much more about the character, especially the man. I mean, he's the only character. There are some AI things in the ship with him, and we have him being triggered by these little bitty things that happen, and then he'll remember something from the past that kind of tells him who he is and why he's there and what he's doing. And it really does have a lot of the science that is explained, and I didn't understand all of it, but I certainly didn't find it off-putting, and I wasn't like, I don't want to read this because I don't care about that science stuff. I wasn't like that at all. I thought it was fantastic. And so I know that I talked about this when I requested any other sci-fi book like Project Hail Mary. So I'm sorry if you've had to listen to me talk about this book twice, but it was that good. So there you go. Finally, the last one that doesn't have a category is Ordinary Monsters from NetGalley. I got this off of NetGalley, and it was fantastic. Like, I was so surprised by what I thought was going to happen and what I thought this book was going to be about and what it was ultimately about. This is a great character study. I don't want to give a lot away about what's happening, but it has some fantastic characters in it. It is a really long book, and I thought, oh, I'm going to get bored of this book. I did not. I wanted to read it. I kept wanting to read it. I wanted to pick it up again and again and find out everything that was happening with these people. So this is a great book if you like character-driven stories. It's fantastic. I'm not giving anything else away. That's all I'm saying. Now, that's all I'm going to talk about here at Sonic because I do want to start driving. But the dogs are going to have to stop and go to the bathroom. I'm probably going to have to stop and go to the bathroom. I mean, of course I am. It's 7 hours. And I got this big tea. And I've got to stop and eat lunch. So along the way, I will be stopping and updating another section of books that I read for the month of July. Okay, it's time to do my first set of books, which are all the books that I read about moving. They were really more about road trips than about moving. And the only one I have physically is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. This one, people have been commenting about how dark it is and how some of them are actually worried about reading it and starting it because it is so dark, and it really is, but it's just exactly what it claims to be. It's a dystopian novel about what happens at the end when there is no more America the way we think it is, and everything is devastated and some kind of nuclear holocaust has happened. So I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it's basically just two characters, the man and the boy, and that's it. We follow the two of them. It's great. Again, if you love characters, this is a good book. And it's dark, but I wouldn't say that it's devastating. It doesn't leave you without any hope. So I recommend it. The other book about moving. Well, I read two books called The Road Trip, or one was called Road Trip and one was called The Road Trip. Anyway, The Road Trip by Beth O'Leary was a romance that I wasn't wild about. I talk more about it in the video for this series. So if you missed it, go back and check it out. But it was okay. I just think that straight romance is not really what I'm after these days. I realized that I'm still sitting here without turning the car on. My dogs are like, Mom, it's hot in here. The third book, or the other book called Road Trip, is the one about the dogs, and they are driving from, well, I don't remember where they're going. I don't know the cities, but they're going to get a dog that needs to be rescued, or that's been held as a rescue dog, and they're going to go get it to bring it back to their house. And so it is the dad and the son and their current dog that they have. And somehow by the time they get there to pick up the dog, they have acquired more people. Like now there's 5 people and a dog. along the way. And so it was cute, but I mean, it didn't blow me away either. It was just cute. And then we had Road Rage by, well, it was 2 novellas. One was written by Stephen King and Joe Hill, and the other one was written by Richard Matheson. I think it's Richard. It could be Robert, but I think it's Richard. Anyway, it was just 2 novellas or short stories, and I really enjoyed them. They were really good and scary, and yeah. So none of those books had anything to do with specifically moving. They were all about road trips. So I should have read them for a road trip vlog, I guess, and not for a moving vlog, but that's what I did. Now, let me see if I can figure out what city I'm in right now. I have been driving for almost 2 hours. So let me see what city I'm in. I'm pretty sure I'm still in Alabama. I'm still in Alabama, but let me see. Okay, so it seems like the closest city that I'm near is Tuscaloosa, or the closest like big city. I'm about to get on the interstate for just a little bit. This is mostly just back road driving to get from my parents' house to my house, or from my house to my parents' house, whatever. So at least the highway did have 2 lanes or 4 lanes, so I can 2 lanes going my way. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with this video. This is about something. What's this about? This is about all the books I read in July. And July was the month that we officially moved into our house, so maybe it's fitting that I'm driving while I'm doing this. Anyway, I'll be back to talk about the next kind of books, the next set of books that I read when I'm a little further down the road. Okay, I'm not touching the camera. I'm leaving it balanced, but we're leaving Alabama and entering Mississippi. So, we are in Columbus, Mississippi, and we had to stop for everybody to go to the bathroom. And I want to talk about the next section of books, which were the Tamara Pierce books that I read. And I did put these in a vlog also. And it was the last 3 in a quartet. So I had already read Sandry's book, and then I read Triss's book, Deja's book, and Briar's book. And I really feel like these books could have just been one giant book, like one really long book, because all 4 kids have their point of views in each of the books, but each of the books just focuses more on the background of one of the characters, the one that it's named after. So anyway, reworking it a little bit, I think it could be one book. But these are Tamara Pierce, what would probably be considered on the young side of young adult, the upper side of middle grade. I feel like they're fantasy books. They're about 4 kids that get sent off to this school, and they find out that they are magical, but in a different way than magic normally works in this world. And so they're kind of outcasts, and it's just about the mentors that surround themselves, or that surround these kids, and the way the kids kind of come together and bond together. And I think it's so well done as far as like bringing different cultures in, and the kids first having these preconceived notions about how this people is and how this people should act and all that kind of stuff, and this people groups, but they find out like, oh, it's just a kid like me, like they're just a kid like me. And so there are a lot of things like that happen throughout this quartet, and I really enjoyed it. I'm excited because the next quartet I'm reading from Tamara Pierce in August is also about these 4 kids, just when they're a little bit older, I think. So I really like this series. I really like all of Tamara Pierce's books. If you like fantasy and you want to break from some of the darker, like heavy fantasy stuff, Tamara Pierce is the way to go. She's got some great characters and some really, really good stories. Okay, Columbus, Mississippi. I don't know how many hours, 3 hours and something left till I get there. I'll be stopping a couple more times because I have a couple more kinds of books to tell you about. And I guess I'm going to wrap this up later today at my parents' house. I read more books in July than I thought I did. So anyway, I'm going to keep going, keep driving, and keep stopping to tell you about books. Well, greetings from Winona, Mississippi. At least I think it's pronounced Winona. I just passed the little town that I think was called Kilmichael. Kilmichel. Kilmichael? I don't know what else it would be pronounced in Mississippi. Anyway, it said it was the childhood home of B.B. King, who is a jazz musician, if you don't know who he is. Or like the grandfather of jazz, blues, not jazz, blues. Anyway, I know B.B. King from Memphis, but that is beside the point and not what we're talking about. The next set of books that I read were the NPR books from Tales from Around the World, and I did not have any of those physically, nor do I have any of them physically yet. But I read Patsy, and this is a book about a woman in Jamaica who felt trapped in her life. This is set in the 70s and 80s, I'm pretty sure, somewhere around there, 1970, 80. And she got a visa, a temporary 90-day visa or whatever, to be able to leave Jamaica and go to the United States. And she had no plans to return, but she did not tell her 5-year-old daughter that. So we follow Patsy's journey in America, and we follow her daughter's journey left behind in Jamaica. It is such a great story of, I feel like I have said this for every book, but such great characters. Like, the characters are so well done in this book. And I know that's why books stand out to me and I remember them, is because the characters are fantastic. But that really stood out to me in this book. The realness of everybody being flawed, perfectly flawed, but also just so well-rounded. And I could see where all of them are coming from. The good things they did, the bad things they did, like, everything just made sense to me in a human, I don't know, in the we all are all human kind of way. I really liked it. The next one was Swimming in the Dark. This one I felt like, well, it was a letter written from a guy to another guy that he loved, I think. It's kind of a, here's what was going on in my mind as we were meeting each other and falling in love. And this is set in Poland in, I don't know exactly the time frame. There was apparently a communist revolution happening there. I know nothing of Polish history. And so this did help me a little bit, but the guy writing the story is leaning towards the rebellious side of the government, and the other guy is not. And the other guy's doing a lot of like, we need to present ourselves this way, and this is how it needs to look, and this is not really what's happening, but I'm just pretending to be this way. And there was a whole lot of me going, I know you're not falling for that. And he was falling for it, and I did not like it. So that one I didn't like as much, just because there was not, I don't know, it didn't feel as deep. Although clearly we have one perspective and they're telling things that have happened in the past. So it's written in a letter saying things that had happened before. And so I don't know. I think I don't like that format as well. And so that one was not my favorite. Then I read Noor by Nnedi Okorafor. This one is awesome. This was such a cool look at what happens when technology gets to be too much. And I just read a book today that was kind of about the same thing, or I just finished it today, which I'll talk about in an upcoming video. But it's the idea of technology moves faster than philosophy, and meaning that a man's a man, like a human being, not a man, but their philosophy is shaped over 40, 50 years of their life. Philosophy is shaped. Technology is created and then can be added upon by the next generation. Well, in philosophy, the next generation has to live the things in order to be able to believe the philosophy. Like, I don't know if that makes sense or not, the way I'm trying to explain it, but it was such a profound thing for me today that I thought, that is very true. That's why there's a quote. Now I don't even know what movie it's from. If I find out what movie it's from, I'll put it over here. But it may be one of those like Jurassic Park movies. But he's saying, we were only asking ourselves if we could. We never stopped to ask if we should. That really sounds like a Jeff Goldblum quote from Jurassic Park. So maybe it is. But it's that same thing. Like, just what is the next thing? What is the next thing? What can we do? We never stop to go, should we be doing this thing? Whatever the next thing is, like, what are the ramifications? And that's kind of the same way about the philosophy can't move as fast as the technology, because technology can continuously be added upon. Philosophy has to be learned through experience, and you can't. Technology can go faster than experience. That pretty much is what I'm trying to say, I think. Anyway, that's what this book, Noor, is about. This girl who has some parts that maybe are not all hers, originally hers, and she gets accused of a crime and has to run away. And as she's running away out into the desert in Africa, she runs into another guy who is also escaping from being accused of a crime he did not commit. And so the two of them together end up in kind of I was going to say an oasis, but it's not really. It's a created oasis in the middle of the desert where other exiles are, and they learn what's really happening when they get there. It was fantastic. I loved it so much. Okay, then the last book that I read was The Return of Faraz Ali. This one, we start out the first half of the book. I know I described it this way before. The first half of the book takes 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks to go through the first half of the book. The second half of the book is like 20 years. Like, it goes so fast, years just fly by. And so this is the same way with Patsy. With Patsy, I feel like the front half of the book is really slow paced, and we get, not slow paced, but like normally paced, like this day, then this day, then this day. And then the second half is like 10 years have passed and 5 years have passed, all kinds of stuff. So that's how both of these kind of felt. But for The Return of Faraz Ali is in Pakistan. It takes place in India and Pakistan. And whatever kind of war was happening between India and Pakistan, this is again me being an American and knowing zero about any kind of Pakistani-Indian war, where maybe Pakistan used to be part of India and then it was not, and I don't know. That I could just be making that up, but it had something to do with that, and it takes place sometime around that time. But there is a guy. Faraz Ali is born in an area of Pakistan that is just for prostitution and gambling. And when you're born there, you have your daughters are trained to be prostitutes. Then you sell them when they're like 12 or 13, and then they become prostitutes, and they then take care of their mothers as their mothers age. And sons are just not really wanted. There's not much they can do with them. Well, this son is born, and the man who had come there to visit with his mom and got him pregnant comes to get him. And not because he wants to take him home, he sends him to another family, but he just wants him to have an opportunity. So he brings him, and then he doesn't want to admit that he's his son. He doesn't want to have anything to do with him. So that's how Faraz grows up. And we meet him as an adult, and we're hearing what happened to him in the past. And he talks to his father a few times. His father has gotten him a job at he's a policeman, and his father has gotten him a job doing, covering up crimes, I guess, that his father wants him to cover up. Although Faraz is like, I'm not doing that. Like, somebody got murdered, a little girl got murdered in the place where Faraz was born, and he knows that's where he's from. He just doesn't know who his mom is. He remembers a mom and a sister, and that's it. So he's on a journey to find them and find out more about them. And little does he know that they also start to look for him and find out and try to find him. So that was such a good story too. I really enjoyed it. I liked all of the NPR books this time. Swimming in the Dark, like I said, was my least favorite, but I still liked them all. And I did do a video specifically about those where I talk about them a little bit more. So although I talked about them a lot this time. So anyway, I'm going to leave Winona. I stopped for lunch at McDonald's. I got more tea. So I'm going to eat my lunch and drive some more. I only have like 2 hours until I get there. So, or 2.5 hours or something. So I'll probably only be stopping one more time. I'm going to talk about the Alabama books that I read, and then talk about the Stephen Graham Jones books that I just finished. And then that's it. That's all I finished. Oh, I do have one more bonus book that I forgot to talk about at the beginning. I'll add it on at the end. It's fine. I'll see you in a minute, and we'll see where I am. I'm probably still going to be in Mississippi, by the way, because my parents live only like an hour into Arkansas, maybe not even an hour. So I'll probably be in Mississippi still the next time I see you. Okay, now we're in Greenville, Mississippi. I'm actually just on the other side of it, but I had to video for you when I was driving really slowly down through the outside of town. Greenville is where I had to come for a lot of my appointments when I was a kid. So like my orthodontist was here and that kind of stuff, because while it is across the state line in Mississippi, it's only 45 minutes or an hour from my house, and it is like the closest one. So I spend a lot of time down in Louisiana and in Mississippi because they're close by. So this is the part of Mississippi that I know. This is the Mississippi Delta area, and that means just on either side of the actual Mississippi River, which we're about to cross over. So I'm going to film it with my camera in a stationary position so nobody freak out, but I'm going to film myself going over the bridge. You're already watching it now because I'm going to put this over the top of me talking. So anyway, this is the Mississippi River Bridge going from Greenville, Mississippi to Lake Village, Arkansas. And this is like where I had to go all the time to cross this bridge. It's not this bridge. The bridge that I used to cross has been blown up and this bridge is in its place. So this is, though, the crossing of the Mississippi River. I used to love going over here when I was a kid because you could see barges and stuff that would be being pushed down the Mississippi. And I mean, I had no idea the iconic history behind the Mississippi River. I just knew that it was huge and that we crossed it all the time. And then there's that whole thing where you try to hold your breath while you go over a bridge, and nobody could do it over this bridge because it's just too big. So of course it's not the longest bridge that I've ever been on. It's not the longest bridge in the world, but it's my bridge, right? Like it's the one that I know the most, that I've driven on or ridden on the most. Okay, so the books that I'm going to talk about right now are the Alabama books as I am crossing the river into Arkansas. But I have two of them. I have Helen Keller, The Story of My Life, which is the large print edition that I absolutely love. And Helen Keller is from Alabama, which I found out when I read this book. She also was only 22 years old when she wrote this book, which is awesome to me that she wrote her life. So Helen Keller was a normal little kid until she was 18 months old, maybe 2 years old, and she got an illness. It was some kind of fever. Well, I don't know. It doesn't say on the back. It just says from infancy. But she says in here that maybe she wasn't 18 months old, but she was just starting to say some words. Specifically, water is one of the ones that she knew. She said wah-wah when she was little. So, whatever age you are when you call water wah-wah, that's about the age she was. She got sick. She went blind and she went deaf and then mute for the longest time. But I think the muteness was more because she couldn't hear the sounds to know what sounds to make. And I think that's why she was mute, because she vocalized things. She would scream and yell and kick. And so it wasn't that she wasn't saying anything. It's just that she wasn't saying words. And so she had a teacher. Her parents, first of all, were fantastic. I love the relationship that she has with her dad, and how at 22 he's already passed away and she's so sad about it. I just love that the relationship that she had with her dad was amazing. Anyway, I loved hearing about her life in Alabama, and I mean, her family was rich and white, and so they were able to provide her with a lot of stuff in the 1800s that a lot of people wouldn't get to do. She hung out with Alexander Graham Bell. What? Anyway, it was a very cool book, and I really liked it. I think anybody should read it. It's really short, and it's about Helen Keller, who I think everybody's heard of, but we don't know information about her. Okay, then I read that I also have Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. Whistle Stop, Alabama is where this is set, which is just outside of Mobile. I'm not even sure if it's real, if it's a real place or made up for the book, but this takes place in the 1930s. Yeah, sometime around there, the 1930s in the past, and then up to the 1980s in the present. And so this woman goes with her husband to visit his mother at the nursing home, and when they get there, there's an old lady sitting there, and the woman leaves the room with her husband and his mom and lets them have some time, and she sits next to this old lady, and this old lady just talks to her and tells her about her life in Whistle Stop, Alabama. And it It's so good. It's funny. It's fantastic. My only drawback again is that because it's set when it is, they use the N word all the time. And as I said in the video that I did about this, I just get pulled out of the story every time I hear it. And I realize that it's true and it's what happened, but it just takes me out of the book every time. So that's it. Oh no. Oh my gosh. The last one was a book in verse that I read called Home and Back Again. I'm just making that up. That might not be true. Something and Back Again. There and Back Again. No, that's a Hobbit's tale. I think it must be Home and Back Again. Anyway, it's a novel in verse, middle grade, during the fall of Saigon. And it's about a family fleeing during the fall of Saigon and coming to the United States. And they move to Alabama. Like, that's where they land. That's where their sponsors are. And there's a family who's sponsoring them there. And I love so much the little girl's perspective. She's 11 years old. It's 1 year of her life. And it really feels like we're getting everything from an 11-year-old perspective. I love it. Okay. I'm actually going to drive now and go across this bridge. And then I will be in Arkansas. And it'll be home. It's so close to home. I'm less than an hour away. I do have one more stop to make. I'm going to show you guys where I worked my first job. That's where we're going to go next for me to do the Stephen Graham Jones books. Okay, this is a cotton field in Arkansas near the Mississippi River. This is not the exact cotton field that I worked in because I worked in multiple cotton fields, but this is the beginning where it all started. My first job was scouting cotton for the game and wildlife. I don't know. I scouted cotton for somebody. And my job was to look through the cotton and tell them what kind of bugs were out here in the cotton so that they knew what kind of insecticides and stuff like that to spray on these cotton plants. I will tell you one thing. It was a bunch of teenagers, and we did not do a great job. This over here is not a cotton field. We did not do a great job. That, however, is one across the road. We had about 15 fields that were our responsibility, and twice a week we had to go into each one of those fields. And there was a group of 3 of us, and that's what we did for our summer job. It lasted June, July, and August, over the summer, of course. Okay, let's talk about Stephen Graham Jones. I read 4 books, novels, short stories that were put out by Tor.com. Hold on. Okay, that's better. And they were all Stephen Graham Jones level good. Like I think I am figuring out literary horror. Come here, Django. Django is ready to be done. And we're about 25 minutes from home. He's ready to be done. Anyway, Stephen Graham Jones wrote literary horror that always has a little bit of a twist from the main character / protagonist, right? That, I think, is what I like the most about his writing, and I think that, to me, explains the kind of writing that I want to do, and I think that's why I like Stephen Graham Jones. Okay, so I read The Night Cyclist. I'm not going to get these in the right order, so I'm sorry. I read The Night Cyclist, which was literally about a guy who rode his bicycle at night and ran into something that he couldn't quite explain. The next one that I read was Chapter 6. That one is about a man, like a paleontologist kind of guy, he and a doctor that his advisor professor that's reading his dissertation or his thesis, whatever. They're the only 2 that are alive in this post-apocalyptic zombie story. And Chapter 6 of his dissertation plays into the story, which is why it's called Chapter 6. I read Men, Women, and Chainsaws. That was so good. That one didn't quite have the same twisty kind of thing that I think a lot of Stephen Graham Jones does, but it did have the, like, it had the person doing the thing that you didn't expect them to do, which I think happens in his books as well. Then I read Wait for Night. Y'all, why do I not remember what Wait for Night? This was the last one that I read, and I do not even remember what this was about. Like, I would have to go look it up again to remember what this was about. It was 20 pages. It was the shortest one, and maybe that's why I can't remember. I feel like it's going to occur to me, and I'm going to be like, oh, wow. Of course. The first line says it's about a day laborer staying late, and I was like, oh, that's it. That's it. This book was really cool. It was actually about people that you work with every day that might be more than what you think they are. So that's all I'm going to say. But it's about a group of day laborers that are cleaning up a ditch area that this company needs, and things happen. So that's what that one is. Okay, that wraps it up. That's everything except my bonus book. My bonus book, Night of the Living Rez, Morgan Talty. Stories. This is a series of short stories, or a group of short stories. I got this on NetGalley, and then I also pre-ordered a copy of it because I knew that I just wanted it. This is really good. It's really good. And I don't even know. Let's see. We do get a thank you at the back from the people, and I mean from the author. And I wanted to read this right here where he said this. A note on the Penobscot spelling. It says the Penobscot language was historically an oral language. Over the years, it was given an alphabet and a spelling system. I've chosen not to use that system and have opted instead for phonetic spelling in this book for a couple of reasons. In writing the language phonetically, I've strived for accessibility so that Penobscot and non-Penobscot alike can pronounce the words. So he is saying what he was trying to do through this whole thing, and then he said there's a lot of stuff that he says his grasp of the Penobscot language is rudimentary. I have a lot to learn, and so too do the characters that I write about. And it's so good. So he also says thanks to everybody back here in the back, but I always love it, of course, when we get notes from the authors. You know, that's always my favorite part. So this was just following one boy. I wish I knew his name. Let's see. Okay, it doesn't even say his name, but it's just different stories involving this boy and living on the Penobscot reservation and not. And he does say, I am indebted to the Penobscot Nation, to all my ancestors who came before me, who endured and persisted for us to be here, for its immense support. Tribal resources allowed me to pursue my dream in higher education, which undoubtedly helped me to get where I am. Thanks must also go to the Penobscot community at large. You all have cheered me on and have always encouraged me. Thank you. So it's just really cool. Like, I like that this is current. Like, this is a story. This is a series of stories about life on a reservation in Maine now. Now, it's not true, of course, but the look at it is set now in modern times, and I really like it. So, contemporary fiction writer. Fantastic. I love this book. Okay, that wraps us up. That ends it. I said I was going to end it at their house, but I'm ending it here in the cotton fields. Also, I'm about to start driving through some of the wooded areas. They're already around me. Like, Arkansas's motto is the natural state. And I have not quite found a place yet that is like Arkansas. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it's so ingrained in me, but it is. It's a part of me. And so my favorite part of Arkansas is driving through the woods. And I wrote something about the woods and how my grandfather was a logger and worked in the woods, and how my family members have hunted these woods, and my family that's here in Arkansas has been here since the early 1800s. And yes, that means that my family was involved in a lot of things that I definitely don't agree with or think is right at all. However, I do think that being in a place for that long just, I don't know, seeps into who you are as a person. And I love coming home. I love that there's a place that feels like I'm always understood, or I always understand this place. Anyway. And that's what it is. And so if you want to stick around, I'm going to end it right here. But if you want to stick around, I'm going to read the thing that I wrote about the woods and how the woods call to me in some kind of way. So if you want to stick around, you can stick around and listen to that. I know I'm not an audiobook narrator, but I'm just going to try reading it. If there's nothing at the end of this, it's because I tried to do this and I either couldn't get through it without crying, or I just decided I was not going to read it. So hopefully there's more to this video. If not, this is the end of it. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. My family wasn't big on hiking. That doesn't mean we weren't in the woods. It just means we weren't walking in the woods. We were playing and working and hunting and loving everything about the woods. My grandfather was a logger. That means that he spent most of his life among the trees. I wonder what he saw when he was out there. He died before I was born, so I've never been able to ask him, but I wonder what he saw and what he thought about being out among the woods. He was also a hunter. My daddy and my brother and my nephews are all hunters, and I wonder what they think about when they're all alone among the trees. I've been hunting enough to know that, like fishing, it's just a lot of sitting around waiting for things to happen. Maybe I'll ask them what it's like for them when they're out there all alone. What do? Do they play on their phones, or do they take the opportunity to just be silent? This was always the hardest part about hunting for me. I can't keep my mouth closed, and being silent for any length of time is torturous for me. But when my daddy or my brother is out alone in the woods waiting for a deer to come up, I wonder what they think about. I know what I think about when I'm in the woods. I think about peace and quiet and how rare those things are in my life. I think about what it would have been like to live before all of our modern things intruded, and then I'm thankful for my mosquito spray and my cell phone. I don't remember the first time I went on a hike. I don't remember the first time I purposefully walked into the woods to walk on a trail, and I certainly don't remember the first time I was in the woods. I'm sure I was a baby. I remember that the woods are wonderful, and no amount of horror movies as a teenager can take that away from me. I remember playing with my younger cousins, all girls, by collecting sticks and making houses on the ground with the sticks being different rooms. I remember playing with my older cousins, all boys, when they would take me to the woods to see a snake or a ghost hanging from a tree or any other gross thing they thought would be funny to show me. I remember just sitting out next to the deer camp cook shack, watching bats swoop down to try to catch the breadcrumbs and rocks that we were tossing up. I remember climbing onto the butane tank behind the sleep shack and pretending it was a horse and I was riding so fast. I remember getting my first sip of beer as a child and thinking it was the grossest thing in the world. I still think this is true. I remember getting my hand slammed in the sleep shack door and not wanting to cry, so I held my breath and passed out. This happened a lot, but this was the last time. And I remember waking up with my mother screaming and laying on a table and blood was pouring down my face. Yes, I still have the scar on my eyebrow. I remember the faces of people who are no longer living. I remember the taste of foods that I'll never taste again, because I'm hopeless at cooking and no one can do it exactly like Miss Jessie Faye did. I remember hearing a waterfall and actively using a map to figure out how to get to it. I remember when I learned about geocaching and forced everyone in my life to search for them with me. My daddy loved this best, and I think it's because most of them were hidden in the woods and in places he remembered from his childhood. I remember watching a documentary on the Appalachian Trail and getting the hiking bug so badly I didn't know what to do about it. I remember driving for a couple of hours to make my whole family walk a few miles on the AT just to say that I had done it. I remember planning one of our anniversaries around a 4-day backpacking trip on the AT and falling in love with the woods and Ron all over again on that trip. Even the blisters didn't stop the pure joy that I felt being out there and being free. I remember doing everything I could to find hikes I could take, even in Spain, because woods are woods. Okay, the Black Forest in Germany is really beautiful woods, but I've rarely seen anything that I love more than driving down a road in South Arkansas being surrounded by huge trees. There is nothing more beautiful to me than the woods. I remember the exact feeling I have every time I drive back to my childhood home and know when I've entered my happy place. It's so much more than a house or two. It's the place, the space. I don't have words to describe it, but I have memories. I remember times that I can never have back again, and maybe that's the point of memories. They are a key into another time and another place, and when I'm in the woods and I remember all the other times I've been in the woods, then those people and those memories are never far from me.